Check this out. What happens when someone creates magic the pack never thought to forbid because it never imagined that someone could actually do that? The most important thing Witch Hat Atelier establishes in Chapter 1 is not a character or a conflict. It is a fact about how magic works. All it takes is conjuring ink and knowledge of casting seals. Then anyone can do it. Magic is not a gift you're born with. It is a craft with a learnable structure, a sigil in the center that determines the type of spell, signs arranged around it that determine the form, direction, and size, and an outer ring that completes the seal and activates the magic. That is the whole system. 3 components, learnable by anyone willing to study. Listen, that is what we're going to talk about here today. And I want to say, what's up, everyone? It's your girl, Mel. This is a cumulative manga analysis of Witch Hat Atelier, chapters 1 through 17. We're looking at the magic itself, how it actually works, what the rules can and cannot reach, and what it means that the most interesting thing happening in this story are operating in the space between what is forbidden and what was simply never anticipated. Let's jump into the magic in this story. Kifri tells Coco in chapter 3 that things merely heard and read are quickly lost, but things understood and spoken aloud stay clearly etched in the mind. He follows that with something that matters even more. Understanding opens the way to mastery, and mastery opens the way to things you could not do before. Listen closely. He is not describing memorization. He is describing comprehension as a door. And in a magic system built entirely on craft, rather than birthright, that distinction is everything. Because if you truly understand how something works, not just the steps, but the reason behind the steps, you can begin to work in the spaces the steps did not cover. That is the foundation, and everything that follows in chapter 17 is built on top of it. Now let's talk about how adaptation is built into the magic system. In chapter 14, Kifri stands beside a wild apple tree on a hill and watches Coco practice the grasping wind sigil. Tartah makes a connection. When you pick an apple by hand, you twist it at the stem. So angle the sign of pulling the same way. And Kifri's response to that is not a correction or a caution. He calls it a clever adjustment and says directly that a spell can be adapted to any sort of situation if you carefully arrange the sigils to suit your particular goal. So let's stay with that for a moment. He is not describing a loophole. He is describing how magic fundamentally operates. Adaptation is not a workaround. It is the design. The signs exist specifically so that the caster can adjust what a spell does, how it moves, and what shape it takes. The system was built with flexibility inside of it. Tartah demonstrates this herself earlier in the story when she shows Coco a spell that she created on her own. A warmth and comfort spell built from her childhood dream of sleeping on a cloud. And we know that one pretty well because that's one of the ones they use in the Labyrinth arc. She tells Coco she has been experimenting with her spell, drawing it to make it happen, and that when she finishes it, she intends to submit it for official consideration as a general use spell, that can be available to all witches. Tartah is not breaking rules. She is operating exactly within the system and producing something new inside it. We see Ollie creates new contraptions all the time so that he can make money off of it. So all of this matters because it tells us original magic is possible, recognized, and even encouraged with witch society. The system has a formal path for new spells to be submitted and considered. That path exists because the people who built the system understood that magic would grow, it would evolve. What they could not account for was the direction of that growth or what direction that growth might take. So let's talk about the space, the rules, like never covered. The pact forbids specific things. Everything on the list shares one quality. The people who wrote the pact had already seen it or seen the spell done and cast it, right? That's how the pact was able to put things on the forbidden list. The new transformation spells existed. They knew mind control existed. They knew healing spells existed. They banned what they could see. Now, does that mean that no matter what a new spell is, that they got all the categories covered? We cannot say that. That's one of the things that I love about this story. That's why I love the magic system in this story. Now, Coco's thinking, in my opinion, will operate in a different space entirely. And we can see that very much with her, but also with Richa wanting to create her own spells as well. So this story is going to get interesting as we continue to go through the chapters. I can tell you, I know it will get interesting. So let's continue to look at other chapters in this cumulative review. In chapter seven, after the labyrinth, Kiefer tells Coco that one's ideas are just as crucial to the magic as one's skill with the pen. He says it basically in response to how she solved the problem inside a sealed space using a combination of what she had been taught and what she had worked on her own. She is not a rule breaker. She is someone whose instinct is to push further when something does not work. That instinct leads her somewhere the rules sometimes do not anticipate. And in this magic system, that's one of the things that I like as well. But that is also why the Knights Morales also exist as well. They will continue, and the Great Hall will continue to have to, cast some judgment on some things. In chapter 16 and 17, Coco takes the sigil of earth, a spell of destruction used for drilling and crushing, and considers what happens if you reverse the signs. If the spell normally breaks things apart into smaller pieces, what does it do when you draw it upside down? Does it try to put pieces back together? She is not circumventing the Pact. She is asking a question the Pact never thought to answer. Possibly, the Pact forbids magic that directly affects the human body or mind. A construction spell built from a reverse destruction sigil does not touch the body. It does not touch the mind. It exists in a space the Pact's language simply does not reach. And then Tartah picks up the pen. He looks at what Coco drew and asks whether the signs could go on the sides as well, not just the top and the bottom. He is not a trained witch. He is thinking like someone who balances things for a living, practically, physically, and from every angle. And Coco tells him that if he makes his own adjustment and changes how the spell works, it becomes his own original magic. In my opinion, that exchange is the clearest statement the story makes across 17 chapters about where magic is actually going. New magic is not being invented by the institution. It is being discovered by people working in the gaps. A girl who asks, what happens when you reverse a sign? A boy, and a boy, the system never made room for, who knows how to look at a shape from every side. Now, let's talk about why this should concern the Great Hall. Kiefer says something in chapter 8 that is easy to hear as reassurance and harder to hear as a warning. He is explaining the Knights Morales to Coco, their function, their reach, the fact that they operate without debate or exception. And then he places his hand on her shoulder and tells her that magic exists to make people happy. He says it as comfort, but read it against everything else he does in these 17 chapters, and it functions as something else. It is a standard. It is a standard the institution keeps failing to meet. He also says in chapter 17, directly in response to the fact that sleep magic is forbidden and Coco cannot use it to address her nightmares, that all great discoveries are born of adversity. He does not say there's no answer. He says they will search for another way. That is a man who looks at the boundaries of what is permitted and does not see walls. He sees the place where the next discovery begins. The Great Hall's concern is not unfounded. The brimmed caps or brimmed hats practice forbidden magic, and that is a real threat the system was built to address. But the more interesting pressure on the situation across these 17 chapters is not coming from people breaking the rules. It is coming from people creating things the rules never covered and doing it without any intent to cause harm, simply because they understand the craft deeply enough to see where it goes. A spell that the Pact never imagined is not forbidden. It cannot be, right? There was no rule written for it. And if the people producing that new magic are an outsider girl who comprehends the magic more intuitively than most trained witches, and a boy with a condition which society has no accommodation for, then the institution's problem is not enforcement. Its problem is that it built a system around controlling known magic, and what is coming is something it has never seen before. Witch Hat Atelier has laid out a magic system that is learnable, adaptable, and growing in directions its governing institution cannot fully predict or control. The rules cover what's known or what is known magic. If you made it to the end of this video, thanks for hanging in there with me. Do not forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share this video. I will meet you at the next Pointed Hat discussion. Thanks for stopping by and watching.